Going to be a pretty legendary adventure today. We are currently at Upper Lee Meadows on Lee Canyon Road in Lee Canyon, and there you can see the South Sister and the North Sister, and even the Black Rock Sister. What we're going to do is, from this starting point, we're going to head up to the top of this hill, which is the beginning of the mid-ridge in Lee Canyon. It's the ridge right in the center there that rises above the ski area right down here to the left side of that flat area where we meet up with the North Loop Trail. Then we're going to take the North Loop Trail over to Lee Peak, and here you can see a larger view, Lee Meadow. There's the beast, by the way. And the ridge leading up to the North Loop Trail, then Lee Peak. Then we're going to go from Lee Peak to Charleston Peak. So Lee Peak to Charleston Peak, and then we're going to hit the South Loop Trail, descend to Griffith Peak area. I guess descend to the junction before Griffith Peak, take a little detour up to the summit of Griffith Peak, if we have enough energy by then, and then head down to the South Loop Trailhead in Kyle Canyon, where I've stashed my mountain bike, and hopefully it'll still be there because I need to ride it from the South Loop Trailhead back over Deer Creek Road and up to this point. There will be about 7 to 8 miles of pretty healthy uphill bike riding between the South Loop Trailhead and the Upper Lee Meadow here, and a lot of downhill. I don't even count that, but that 7 to 8 miles of uphill is going to probably feel like Mount Everest after all that I have done up to that point. So I don't even know if I can do this, but I do know the entire route because I've taken parts of that route in the past. I've never taken the entire route. So we're putting together all these pieces to make this adventure. So here we go. Let's head up this hill and hit that mid-ridge. Wow, there's nothing like an avalanche slope like that to wake you up. You know, suddenly I'm at 8,000 feet where I'm used to 2,000 feet in the Las Vegas Valley, and I'm climbing this 100 foot avalanche slope. But now here we are at the top, and we're going to navigate to an old road that's going to lead to a water tower, which is the base of the mid-ridge. Mid-ridge is total wilderness. We're going to navigate up that mid-ridge to the junction with the North Loop Trail, just about a mile or two below Lee Peak. So, and by the way, we started out at 6:20 a.m. and I'll make a note at various points, probably the next being the junction, the North Loop Trail. I'll make a note of what time it is. Okay, onward. Okay, here we are on that old road, and pretty much from the looks of this, I don't see any tire tracks. It's unused. And we're going to take this to the water reservoir. And that's the beginning of the mid-ridge. Here we go. Okay, here we are at the water reservoir. You can see it ahead. If we went down this way, we'd be in the Foxtel Canyon Girl Scout camp that's abandoned. But instead, we're heading up the ridge that begins at the water reservoir. And you can see that ridge immediately behind. There it is. We're heading up that ridge. That's the what I call the Lee Canyon mid-ridge. Get my canyons mixed up, but we'll be in them all today. Here we go. Okay, ascending the base of the mid-ridge here. And from here on up to the North Loop Trail at the top of the mid-ridge, which is the upper rim of Lee Kyle Canyons. From here to that rim, it's entirely wilderness. It's very doable, class 2, except for one little brief 4-foot class 3 section, which is like nothing. But the main thing is navigating this ridge. Just stay in the center of the ridge, and there's a perfect halfway point up to that halfway point, which is a gap between some cliffs where we rise up to the mid-ridge center again. At the lower half, stay as close to the mid-ridge center as you can, except you're going to have to circumvent some bluffs, rocks, cliffs, circumvent them to your right or west during the first half of the mid-ridge. And then when you hit that halfway point, take a left, navigate through the cliffs, and then you're back up at the center of the mid-ridge. And from that point, once you hit some more bluffs on that second half, the upper half of the mid-ridge, navigate to your left or east around rock barriers and cliffs. And there's actually a little trail up there I'll show you. That'll take you up to the summit of the mid-ridge and the connection with the Lee Kyle Canyon, the Upper North Loop Trail. So let's continue up, or let's start up this mid-ridge now and get up to the center where things will level off a little bit, not a whole lot, but here we go. Okay, we are now up in the center of the mid-ridge, and yeah, we've got a long ways to go to get to the Upper North Loop Trail, but just wanted to make a note. Yeah, on the to our right, there's pretty steep avalanche slope, but not anything that could be life-threatening. If you fell, you'd just bruise yourself up a little bit, come to a quick stop. But on the left side are sheer cliffs. And so during the lower half of the mid-ridge, you navigate to the right, stay as close to the center as you can, and circumvent any barriers like what you see right ahead, which is mild compared to what we're going to face in a bit. You just navigate to the right, and it's pretty easy to continue right along the top of this avalanche ridge to give you a 360 here. Beautiful views on this trip, and here is Mummy's Head area. Weather-wise, it is 106 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley. When I started here, well, let's see, it's 106 degrees high in the Las Vegas Valley at 2,000 feet upper end of the Las Vegas Valley around Gas Peak, the base of Gas Peak. Yeah, when I started out, it was about 93 degrees. When I started out at the 8,000 foot point, we were looking at about 70 degrees. And so you can count on a 5-degree temperature drop per 1,000 feet of ascent. So even though it's 106 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley today, the upper Las Vegas Valley, it's probably around 115 or more down in Henderson. Anyway, even though it's 106 degrees in the valley at the heat of the day, it'll only be, by the time I hit the South Climb Trailhead on, below Griffith Peak, and I'm back down at 8,000 feet, we're going to be looking at probably around 75 to 80 degrees. Not too bad. So I shouldn't get below 80. I shouldn't get above 80 to 85 tops degrees at any point today. And yeah, so that gives you an idea of the temperature that we face. Now, the weather report said clear skies, and as you can see, this is not clear skies. Last week it was the same prediction, clear skies, and I got caught in a thunderstorm up on Lee Peak, and there was hailstones falling and the ground turned white with hail. The camera stopped working. The trails became fast flowing little streams up there, and the temperature dropped to about 35-40 degrees. What a temperature differential. We were looking last week about an 80 degree, I think, temperature differential between the Las Vegas Valley and the coldest point up at Lee Peak. And hopefully we won't have thunderstorms today because we're going 1,000 feet higher than Lee Peak. We're going to hit Charleston Peak, and yeah, it could really be cold up there if we hit a thunderstorm. Okay, onward. Quick look at the terrain on the lower half of the mid-ridge. Here I am, as close to the, well, I'm on the center of the mid-ridge, rising up, and you can see that there are sheer cliffs to our left. You definitely don't want to try to circumvent the rocky bluffs on the left side. Could be a career-ending move. And there you see, looking back down, and then there's Mummy's Head. And you can see we're on the left, there are sheer cliffs. On the right, pretty steep avalanche slope, but if you stay as close to the center as you can, and as close to any rocky cliffs, outcrops, bluffs, you stay as close to the upper base of those as you can. There is a way, and you are on pretty stable ground. There is Lee Peak, which will be our second destination, the first destination being the connector with the Upper North Loop Trail at the summit of this mid-ridge. Yes, this mid-ridge is truly beautiful. But just a quick note, you will not meet a soul on this ridge. So prepare to be entirely alone for this initial 3 to 4 mile stretch. I had one of my viewers ask me, do you carry bear spray? And there are cougars on this stretch and around these mountains. But my experience has been they are very shy and they'll disappear before you even see them. In my 5 years in the wilderness up here, I have never seen one. But yeah, the viewer said, do you carry bear spray? My answer is no, but I tell you, if I encounter a mean mountain lion up in the wilderness here, my last thought will be that viewer's comment, and why didn't I listen? Where's my bear spray? So use your own discretion as you navigate this type of wilderness. Okay, here we are. Little more view. You can see down to the ski lodge below. And yes, you could shorten the trip a bit by taking the ski lift. There's a ski lift that even operates in the summer, but the problem is it only takes you up to roughly the height where I am right now. And I think of the trouble that you would go through to put all your gear on that ski chair, and then put it back on when you hit the top of the ski lift, wait in the ski lift line. It just seems like a lot more trouble than the energy that you would save on that ski lift. So my recommendation is, yeah, stick to being on foot. And this first section that gets you level with the top of the ski lift, and there's the ski lift right, the top of the ski lift right in that area. This first section really doesn't take long. It doesn't take any longer than if you were on the ski lift, and it's a lot less trouble. So I stick with just be on foot. If the ski lift were like another mile up and got you to the top of the mid ridge, yeah, I'd say definitely do the ski lift, but it doesn't go that far when it comes down to it. Now, a couple interesting spots here. We are looking at, if you took the, no, we're not there yet. I think it's that gully there, that wash up ahead is the Foxtel Canyon wash. If you took that approach to the summit of the Lee Kyle Canyon rim, you'd be on that wash, or I prefer to be a little to the right on the ridge above. So it gives you a little bird's eye view. I may get closer and give you a better view, but then again, I don't know what side of the ridge I'm going to be on at that point. And so we'll stick to this view to be sure. By the way, we're about 9,000 feet at this point, and we've got the first Bristlecone Pines. Where are they now? Now they're disappeared as soon as I mentioned Bristlecone. There's one through the trees. Right there is a Bristlecone, and there are many more that I've passed through before I reached this point. It just so happens that when I say Bristlecone, they're all disappeared at this point. Oh, there's one. They're like stealth bristlecones. They hide when you're looking for them. Okay, onward. And by the way, there's the shot of Lee Peak, which will be our second waypoint. Here we go. Okay, we've passed the first large barrier. It's back there, and we're rising up again, and we skirted it to the right as high, remaining as high as we could, and now we're heading back up to the center of the ridge. It was just a brief bluff. The question comes as I'm hauling nearly 4 liters of liquid up this ridge, is how much water do you need? Definitely we can agree that you don't want to run out. That could be very, very bad. And people have lost their lives that way. On the other hand, there's a point at which it's too much, because you're carrying too much weight. And because of that weight, you actually need more liquid. And so, and of course you're carrying all of it as you're beginning doing the steepest inclines. So yeah, you don't want to carry too much. In a trip of this length, I was thinking 4 liters is about as much as I need, maybe a little bit on the too much side, and we'll check in again at the end, see how much we actually have left. That will be the indication how close we came. Now, another thing that helps moderate this weight is that I lost about 25 pounds in the past 3 months. And so, however heavy this weight is, I'm at my ideal weight, by the way, of 155. Makes a huge difference on a trip like this. But, you know, however heavy that water is, I doubt it's more than 25 pounds. And so just by losing that body weight, I have equalized the weight of the water. And so that's a good thing too. Okay, yeah, you can see there are a few barriers. Nothing much though. I mean, I went over that last log and didn't miss a beat here. So we're rising up now to a great viewpoint where we will see Foxtel Canyon overlook and route. And it's right up here, so we'll just keep going here. Yes, here we are. So, yeah, we keep rising to the middle of the ridge as much as we can. There's going to be a long, maybe 50-yard line of cliffs that I'll need to skirt just at their base, their upper base, at, you know, skirting to the right of this ridge. You'll see it when we get there. And that line of cliffs, after that 50 yards, there's a gap that enables me to reascend to the center of the ridge. And that gap will mark the halfway point on this ridge. Okay, let's take a look at where we are. Just a moment. Let me get just a little bit further, and then we'll get a better look at the Foxtel Canyon wash and the approach, that approach to the Upper Lee Canyon rim. Okay, we are at the best overlook to the Foxtel Canyon approach to the Upper Lee Canyon mid-ridge And I take that approach when I'm heading over to Mummy Mountain, as we will. Maybe next week, maybe I need a week of rest after today, which would actually be smart. But here is that approach. And what I do is about at that point down there, you can see where there's a kind of slope. Right before the slope, you take a right and head up above the ridge. There's a little Girl Scout trail that they created, and it's right down here. And you can see it, you can trace it a little bit of the way there. And that leads up on a much more gradual or protected pathway to Foxtel Canyon Springs, which is right here in this little cove you see in the cliff. Very beautiful. Check out the Foxtel Canyon Springs page on LasVegasAreaTrails.com, and also there is a Foxtel Canyon, Lee to Kyle Canyon by Foxtel Canyon approach page. And if you're going to the summit, which I did recently, of the Lee Kyle Canyon Rim, you take that little Girl Scout trail, it gets you up on the ridge, and you just ride this ridge between the two washes you see there all the way up to the summit of Lee Kyle Canyon. And then if you're going to Mummy Mountain summit, you take a left and you just head along this upper ridge of Lee and Kyle Canyon, and you meet up right in that little dip there, that saddle. You're going to meet up with the main trail to Mummy Mountain, which people take when they take the Trail Canyon trailhead, and they take the North Loop Trail from the Trail Canyon Trail, and there's a tree that has an M on it, the Mummy tree. You just head up this avalanche slope, which I call the horrifying half, and then you reach this, eventually you reach this saddle here, and you continue up the ridge to, you see a band of trees if you look carefully, just below the upper cliff line. You take that band of trees skirting the cliff line right to an opening. It's a V-shaped canyon, and head on up to Mummy Mountain summit. And we'll take the Foxtel Canyon approach and head up to Mummy Mountain summit. I'll call it the Mummy Mountain Grand Crossing, because then we're going to head down the avalanche slope cliffs on the eastern side and meet up with at Mummy Springs with the Cougar Ridge Trail, head down to Deer Creek Road. So, and then where I will have stashed my mountain bike again, and from there we'll head back to Lee Canyon. So that's coming up. In the meantime, yeah, here is a good shot of Lee Peak. And yeah, I don't like the look of those clouds. They're a bit dark. So we may end up in rain and thunder and hail like we did last week, only ascending 1,000 feet higher than Lee Peak to Charleston Peak. And then through the bristlecones here, you can see McFarland Peak. But yeah, Lee Peak to Charleston Peak. But before we hit that, let's just take a look. This is a good place to look at the ridge line. Actually, you see there's a kind of a level area there. That's above the cliffs, above the halfway point. We'll have a nice level area, and then you can see we hit more cliffs. We're going to skirt those cliffs in the upper half of this mid-ridge. We're going to skirt those cliffs to the left, and there will actually be a little trail, and I'll show you when we get up there. But for now, let's continue on. This is pretty nice. We'll hit a cliff line soon, and we'll skirt it. You'll see. Okay, we are at the 50-yard cliff line, and we're going to skirt the right upper base of that cliff line. And I imagine, yeah, a rock climber would just, this would be nothing. But being alone and not being a rock climber, even a fall of this much, what is it, 20 feet, 15, 20 feet, could be a problem. And with no one else up here, who knows what that would be like. So we're taking the trail runners route, and we're going to skirt as high as we can the next 50 yards along the lower edge of this cliff line. And well, here we are. No, actually we're not at that cliff line yet. Let's continue on up here. We wouldn't have had to summit that little mountainous area, or that little rocky area. The cliff line is a little further up ahead. Okay, this is that official 50-yard cliff line, and as I said, you skirt as close to the base, actually touching the base, as you can. And there is another rock climber's route up there, but not for this trail runner. So I'm going to skirt the base, and there is a way, as you can see, avalanche slopes down to your right, the cliff line to your left, and there is a narrow passageway above the avalanche slope, below the cliff. So now we go about 50 yards till we get to the midway gap on this mid-ridge. And as I promised, there is a very narrow passageway right at the base of this cliff and above the avalanche slopes below. And just stay as close to the lower edge of this cliff as you can. And you'll be on ground that is fairly stable. I can do it with one hand and be recording video with the other, so it can't be that bad. But yes, you keep rising up and you just hug this cliff until you get to the gap. Okay, next time we look up, we'll be at the gap. Okay, this is what I mean by hugging the lower edge of the cliff line during this 50 yard section. You're right here, and you can see the avalanche slope below. Yeah, if you stray too wide from the, or wide at all, more than like a foot or two from the base of this cliff on the left, you're going to be in a world of hurt avalanche slope territory. Nothing dangerous down there, but yeah, you're going to spend a lot of energy just trying to keep your balance, and we need to conserve as much energy as we can for this long adventure. So yeah, continuing along this narrow passageway right along the base of the cliffs here. We're approaching the gap. Okay, here we are at what I call the Golly Gap. The Golly Gap is a break in the cliff line. There you see the cliff line continuing past the Golly Gap, and we just traversed this cliff line that's behind us, and you can see the gully continuing downward. Last week on the Lee Canyon to Lee Peak page of Las Vegas area trails. We descended downward, and you actually end at the this gully ends at the upper edge of the ski lift, and from there you can continue down the ski run to the ski area, which is what we did last week, and you can see that on the Lee to Kyle Canyon section where it's Lee Canyon to Lee Peak via the mid-ridge. And this is the halfway point on the mid-ridge. We're going to ascend this gully, little class 3, just 3-4 feet ledge to top, and then we're above the above the difficult part of the gully, which, as you can see, is not very difficult at all. And we will enter into a wide open area back at the top of this ridge. So here we go. Okay, here we are in what I believe is one of the most beautiful, nicest sections of the mid-ridge. We've passed through the Golly Gap at the halfway point on the mid-ridge, and we've reascended to the center of the mid-ridge. And just looking around, you can see that the going is very nice up here. It's still a healthy incline, but nothing like ascending through the Golly Gap. Anyway, yeah, continuing on up, we're going to hit some more cliff barriers. When we hit those barriers, we're going to look for a faint trail just to the left of those cliffs, and we're going to take that to just below the North Loop Trail. When I say just below, yeah, there's a couple 100 feet rise that is an incline up an avalanche slope that is probably 18 inches elevation gain per step. I call it the ladder. I'll let you know when we reach the ladder, and I don't know, the views from video and camera just don't do these avalanche slopes justice, because you can't tell, like, you're looking up a slope right now, and I guess you could see the angle of the trees there if you look carefully, which show that yes, this is a fairly steep slope. It's just a good healthy altitude gain even on this section of the mid-ridge, but the ladder is a whole different matter. Okay, onward. Here's a waypoint. It's what I call the Carpenter Ant Bench, and it's a good place to rest, except if the carpenter ants notice that you're there. They do not like it, and you will have carpenter ants on you, and you'll feel sharp little nips. Anyway, yeah, continuing on up. Okay, we have reached the upper cliffs and bluffs on the Lee Canyon mid-ridge, and this is where you look for the faintest trail, and believe it or not, you're looking right at it, just to the right of that log, and it'll be a little more evident as we ascend, but it'll take you right along the lower edge of these cliffs, and on the upper bluffs you descend about you're about 100 to 200 feet below the cliffs, whereas on the lower half you were hugging those cliffs. Here you just stick to the very faintest trail that's going to guide you 100 to 200 feet below the cliffs and bluffs until you reach the ladder right below the Upper North Loop Trail. So here we go. Okay, now maybe you can see it a little more clearly. This is that very, very faint use trail. And there's the cliff line. So yeah, we're about 50 feet below the cliff line and continuing on up, and you can see definite avalanche slope drop off to the left, cliff line to the right, and trail right between. And let's see if we can get a 360-degree view without heading down this avalanche slope. Yeah, there you go. And now you can see the trail behind me if you look very, very carefully. So yeah, that wasn't quite 360 degrees. I wimped out on that last turn. But okay, onward. Okay, we're still on that faint trail. Of course, we've had to climb over a few little ledges, nothing dramatic. We're still below the middle of the mid-ridge, which is on the horizon up there. But what you can see here is we are approaching the end of this loose rocky section. When we hit the end of this section, we hit the ladder, and that's where we ascend straight up for a couple hundred feet to the summit of Lee and Kyle Canyon, the northern rim, and that's where we hit the Upper North Loop Trail, Mount Charleston North Loop Trail. Okay, so onward. The toughest of the wilderness section is really behind us, and now we're closing in on the North Loop Trail. Okay, now we are ascending the ladder, and when we hit that horizon up ahead, we'll be at the North Loop Trail. So just to give you an idea of the incline, whoops, and that gives you an idea of the stability upon which I'm standing. Yeah, look at the trees and the angle of the trees. This is definitely this whole incline. There's Mummy's head, by the way. This incline is about 18 inches per step. So definitely a steep avalanche slope, but at the top of it is our reward, which is the connecting with the Upper North Loop Trail. And from then on, except for a little deviation up to Lee Peak summit, we will be on trails, which will be a nice change to what we're experiencing right now. Okay, let's continue on up toward that horizon up there. In on the North Loop Trail connection, it's right at that horizon above, but I'm gonna give away my age a little bit. Did you ever play Chutes and Ladders, a game of Chutes and Ladders when you were a kid? Well, this is the ladder going up, and it's the chute going down. So you're in a live game of Chutes and Ladders on this mid-ridge, but we are topping the ridge right at that horizon above, where we'll meet up with the North Loop Trail. Okay, here we are at the Lee Kyle Canyon North Rim summit, and right on the other side of these, this log ahead is the North Ridge Trail. I mean, the North Loop Trail. A little loopy from that exhausting ascent. Anyway, yeah, it took me, if you take away the time for video recording, It probably took me about 2.5 hours to get to this point. Not too very bad. And here is a log upon which I am going to rest and refuel for a little bit, because we've got the approach to Lee Peak, and then if we have enough energy after Lee Peak, Charleston Peak. Once we hit the summit of Charleston Peak, it's pretty much downhill all the way, unless we also summit Griffith Peak. So yeah, there is the North Loop Trail. Mount Charleston North Loop Trail. So we've gone from what is perhaps the most secluded wilderness stretch on this mid-ridge, Lee Canyon mid-ridge, from Lee Canyon Meadows. By the way, there's a good shot of Mummy Mountain. We'll look at that in a bit. But anyway, we've gone from Upper Lee Meadow to the Upper North Loop Trail right up here. And we're about 11,000 feet, maybe a little below that. We need to ascend maybe another 300 feet vertically to reach Lee Peak, but it will be on a nice trail. Makes a huge difference. And then ascend another, I don't know, 700 feet or so. Let's see, for Lee Peak, we're looking at about 11,300, 11,900 to Charleston Peak. So yeah, that's still about 1,500 to 1,600 feet to summit Charleston Peak after Lee Peak. So yeah, definitely want to fuel up really good here, rest a little bit, and then take the next stretch. By the way, there you see the band of trees just below the upper cliff on Mummy Mountain is the trail, actually, that you take to summit Mummy Mountain. We'll be doing that in a week or two, depending on my energy level next week. And right in the center of the screen here, if you look carefully, it's hard to see because of the lighting, but if you look carefully, you can see a V-shaped canyon. That is the final summit approach, where you leave that band of trees below the cliff line and you head up to Mummy Mountain summit. Okay. The weather's holding out very well. It was a little light thunderstorm by this point, and rain falling last week. So between here and Lee Peak, and definitely a lot of rain and hail falling by the time I hit the summit of Lee Peak. Maybe we'll be spared that. The clouds look a lot thinner today, which is nice. So here we are on the most popular, one of the most popular trails in the Spring Mountains. You want to have near marathon conditioning to do this loop. It's an 18-mile loop. And it's a little less strenuous if you don't come up from Lee Canyon, but either way, it's to do this loop, you definitely want to have a good base of conditioning. Otherwise you get up to these levels and you just don't want to continue on up to Mount Charleston. And having said that, we'll see if that's my case today. Okay, onward. Okay, we are on the North Loop Trail, and a mile or so below Lee Peak. And like I said, it's a popular trail. I've already seen a runner running up the trail, and I understand that they make the entire loop in about 5 hours. My best time is 7.5 on the loop, and that includes the doing the section on foot between the South Climb trailhead and the Trail Canyon trailhead. But anyway, yeah, I'm not these days making those times. Anyway, yeah, here's a great shot of Charleston Peak, and maybe we'll get there. It also looks as if we may be hitting some clouds by the time we get up there, and maybe thunder, lightning like last week. Maybe it'll be totally in the clouds and we won't be able to see any view. We don't know, but we'll find out soon. Anyway, yeah, here's the south ridge rim of Kyle Canyon, and then looking at the North Loop Trail, and this high point above us is actually that high point that we looked at from Lee Canyon, just beyond where that mid-ridge meets the North Loop Trail. Okay, feeling a bit revived after the ladder and the mid-ridge and ready to move forward. Okay, here's where the North Loop Trail takes a turn, and caution, not the trail to go straight. Yeah, you end up at a cliff edge. So you take a turn here, and then you begin to wind upward. You're going to hit 3 plateaus where it begins to level off again. Don't take the first plateau to Lee Peak, but there will be just about, I don't know, a few hundred feet beyond the first plateau, there's a second and a third pretty close together. At that third plateau, you're going to want to deviate from the North Loop Trail and head up to Lee Peak. I'll show you where that is. Okay, onward. Winding upward on a very beautiful section. And this is where the Bristlecone Pines begin getting really beautiful here and beyond Lee Peak. They're huge, and you can see the bare wood that has achieved a bit of a burnish contour that, wow, you couldn't stain wood this beautifully if you tried. Look at this. Okay, continuing upward toward those plateaus I mentioned just a moment ago. Here we are at the first plateau. This is a plateau viewpoint, and this little deviation looks remarkably similar to the approach for Lee Peak. And the reason I took this instead and missed it last time is because it was so foggy and cloudy, I couldn't see Lee Peak right there. So anyway, we continue along until we hit the second and third plateau, which are pretty close together. And it's right at that corner there at the base of Lee Peak. And then there will be summit approach. It's not a marked trail, but I'll show you where you can find it and then how to get up to the summit. Okay, onward. Okay, second viewpoint plateau, and continuing on because it is the third that we're looking for where the summit approach is, and it's somewhere right about at that corner somewhere. You'll see it. and it'll head up to Lee Peak. There's Charleston Peak and Griffith Peak, and just the slightest sprinkle of rain. Hopefully that's not the forerunner to something more substantial like it was last week. Okay, onward. Okay, here is the third plateau. So I guess it's the fourth actually that we want, but it's very close to this one. In fact, there it is right there. Wow, look at the views here. You definitely don't want to stray over the edge of this. It's a long, long drop. There's the ground we just covered. It is a good trail. It's a lot easier to navigate than that mid-ridge. And it's actually a little restful even when you're ascending. But yeah, you want to keep your eyes open because there's a lot of drop-offs here. Okay, and here's the fourth plateau. And you'll see a little tree here. And at the base of this tree, there is a little pile of rocks. That marks where you deviate from the trail and you head right up this ridge line. And you hug the upper left side of the ridge. It'll take you right up to Lee Peak summit. Here we go. Okay, continuing on upward. I could take this higher route, but I'm going to take this lower route. It may be a little bit more gradual, but either way, you get to the summit of Lee Peak. And then here's a 360. Yeah, it's a little more level where I'm standing. That's another reason I want to stay on this route. But there you see Charleston Peak and Griffith Peak, and then here you see the ridge line up toward Lee Peak. And yeah, I'm going to take the more gradual ridge line up here and then angle upward to the summit of Lee Peak. Here we go. And what do you know? There's actually a little trail up here continuing to angle upward toward Lee Peak summit, which is at that horizon up there. So let's continue. Here we are, summit of Lee Peak. There is the summit box. Let's take a 360-degree view of where we are. Down below, you can see Lee Canyon, and there's the ski area. And then here's the Upper Bristlecone Pine Trail. That's the Trailhead Parking area. You see cars lined up along the road. Very popular trail. So it's usually you park alongside the road. Sometimes you have to walk all the way up the road to the trailhead. And then looking down Lee Canyon Road, and there you see Upper and Lower Lee Meadow. And Upper Lee Meadows, the one closest to us, and across Lee Canyon Road from Upper Lee Meadow, right in the center there. If you look carefully, you can see the beast parked there. And then here's the length of Lee Canyon Road heading down to the valley below. And then let's just do a 360. There are the south, north, and Black Rock sisters from left to right. Little one there's the Black Rock sister. And then to the left of the South Sister is Max Peak. And then continuing along, you can actually see the ridge line for the Bonanza Trail that leads up past McFarland Peak there to the next high point beyond McFarland Peak, which would be Bonanza Peak. And it's the rounded green peak right in the center. Continuing around, I haven't yet been in this area, so I cannot tell you what it is. It might be the Nopa range. I just don't know. But we'll discover that at some point. Then down in this direction, you're looking down toward Pahrump. And right in the center there, beyond Pahrump, very, very dimly, would be Telescope Peak on the far side of Death Valley. And I don't even know if you can see it. I can't see it with the glare on this screen. A lot of clouds, but that's where it is. And then circling around here, you can see where the North Loop Trail continues around, and it's going to continue to the base of Charleston Peak, and then pretty dramatic ascent, but it's switchbacked, and it looks like, yeah, you'd fall off the side of the cliff, but the trail is actually very good. You just want to keep an eye out for every step, every placement, because there are some real steep cliffs, drop-offs there. And then over here, Griffith Peak. And then the next one, you see that saddle, and then the next peak is Harris Mountain. And then beyond Harris Mountain, you're looking straight at La Madre Mountain. It looks like a snowfield there. I call it the permanent snowfield. And it's actually a limestone slide that is angled very steeply. And the locals here call it Devil's Slide. So that's Devil's Slide there on La Madre Mountain. And then circling around, here you see Fletcher Peak. And of course you're looking down Kyle Canyon toward La Madre Mountain. But then there's Fletcher Peak. And now Mummy Mountain, there's Mummy's Toe. Maybe it's Toes, I don't know. Some people call it Mummy's Toe, like it just has one toe. And then there is the summit, 11,500 feet. Only about a couple hundred feet higher than where we are right now. And you can see, well, you just can see the summit approach there. Right in the center. And then that ridge below us, that's the north ridge of Kyle Canyon. And if you go to and it'd take you all the way to Mummy Mountain without having to descend and then reascend. It's all wilderness. And if you go to LasVegasAreaTrails.com and you look at the 4-peak circuit page, you'll see where I took that ridge line, and we'll be taking it again soon from Foxtel Canyon up to Mummy's Summit. There's Mummy's Head, So there you see the whole profile of Mummy, the toe on the right and the head on the left. And then we're back to Lee Canyon Road. So that's our 360-degree view from Lee Peak and what can be seen from Lee Peak. Now, where I ascended from the North Loop Trail and just ascended up this ridge here, right up this ridge line, I'm going to actually descend down in this direction on this ridge line and meet up with the North Loop Trail down below. I think you see someone wearing a red jacket down there, and that's approximately where we reconnect with the North Loop Trail and then head over to Charleston Peak. So yeah, I'm feeling enough energy now to attempt Charleston Peak. So let's go for it. Okay, now we're heading down this ridge line to reconnect with the North Loop Trail at a higher point than the place where we left it. Perfect angle of descent from Lee Peak. And we were just about to reconnect with the North Loop Trail. And the sun is coming out, which is nice. Won't have to deal with rain, perhaps. Get a good view from on top of Charleston Peak. And in addition, we'll have the camera not stopping because it got too wet. So yeah, and here you can see we just kept right along this ridge line as we descended, similar to the ridge line that we ascended. And you can see there's the North Loop Trail immediately below us. And we will reconnect with the North Loop Trail just about 100 feet beyond where we are right now. Nice gradual reconnection here. And another great thing is that this marks the end of off-trail wilderness navigation. So the navigation should be a lot easier from here on out. There is that final ascent to Charleston Peak, but that's also on a nice trail, and that may actually be easier than some of the off-trail stuff that we've been doing. So here we are back on the North Loop Trail. And we descended the ridge from Lee Peak down that ridge. We connected here beyond where we met up with where we left the North Loop Trail. So it is kind of a shortcut. Okay, let's continue on toward Charleston Peak, which you can see through the trees. And by the way, it is about 11:30, so our timing is pretty decent. The latest that we'd be back at the Upper Lee Meadow is around 8 o'clock, and it'll still be light this time of year, so no darkness experiences on the road on the mountain bike. Plus, if it does not rain, the brakes on the mountain bike will not get wet and they'll work much better. So it'd be nice if we continue in the sun. Right now it's closing in on 106 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley, and I'd say with the cool breeze that we're experiencing up here, a little over 11,000 feet, we're in 70 degrees, maybe 80 degrees. But yeah, if you ever want natural air conditioning, this is the place to get it. Okay, onward. Where what I think is the most beautiful part of the North Loop Trail begins. And this is skirting that cliff area at the base of Charleston Peak before the final summit approach. And not only are there amazing rock formations, but the Bristlecone Pines are extraordinarily beautiful up here. Okay, skirting the cliffs at the base of Charleston Peak, and there will be a dramatic incline to the summit soon. You're looking down on Charleston Village and then back along the route we've been taking. Yes, it does skirt the very edge of these cliffs, but the trail is very nice. And so we continue. Time for another 360. And here we are heading up the North Loop Trail. And you can see around to, there's Lee Peak right in the center. We just descended from Lee Peak. And here is the trail we have just traversed. And wow, look at these cliffs above us. See if I can turn around here. I don't want to get too dizzy on the edge here looking up. But yeah, there we are. Give you a little piece of the North Loop Trail just below Charleston Peak. Speaking of which, let's look around the corner here. We might have a view of Charleston Peak. Yeah, there we are. There's Charleston Peak. Yeah, long ways to go. And this trail winds around that corner up ahead. So yeah, definitely a long ways to go. And once it winds around the corner, after a little bit, then it starts switchbacking up the last close to 1,000 feet to the summit of Charleston Peak. Okay, onward. Just a quick look back along the trail. These are some of my favorite bristlecone pine trees. Beautiful, artistic, right at this corner here. And this is what you can expect on the North Loop Trail below the summit of Charleston Peak. And more amazing bristlecone pines looking back a little bit. And yeah, the artistic beauty of this place just does not end. You got the cliffs, bristlecone pines, and onward. We're not at the dramatic final summit approach yet, but we're getting close. Spring blooms this 4th Saturday in July. Pretty amazing. It's just beginning to be spring up at this level, this altitude. And there is Lee Peak. We ascended the right side, descended the left side. And here is the upper ridge of the north ridge of Kyle Canyon, Mummy Mountain in the background. And I don't know if I can nail that spot where we met up with the North Loop Trail, somewhere around this area. That's a big area. Anyway, continuing along, look at the beautiful bristlecones along this trail. They are just spectacular. Amazing bristlecones. There must be 1,000 different designs that could only be created by nature. Okay, descending a bit around the corner, and then we should be doing our final ascent. Wow, look at these bristlecones. On we go. Well, I guess if you're heading the direction that I'm heading, turn around often and look back, because those views looking backward, you'll see the most beautiful bristlecone pines that maybe you passed on the way up. So that's looking backward and down and onward. More artistic formations of the bristlecone pines. Continuing on upward, we'll be able to see the final summit approach soon. Beginning to wind upward in the final summit approach to Charleston Peak. And when we rounded this corner below, that's where the trail begins to switch back and dramatically ascend upward. So here we go, onward and upward. And we're in a kind of open place. We're about 300 to 500 feet below the summit, and I gotta say, ascending this final approach is much easier than the ladder on the mid-ridge. Okay, and there's the view around us. We're looking at Mummy Mountain. There's a good silhouette of Mummy. There is Charleston Village. And over there, La Madre Mountain. And the Las Vegas Valley behind it. Can't see it because It's a little hazy with the clouds today, but at least it's not as cloudy as it looked from below. And then, yeah, that's up toward the summit area. So we got a ways to go, but we are actually closing in on Charleston Peak summit. Okay, you can hear the wind kicking up. There's the summit up there, at that horizon there. And here we are on the trail to the summit. And looking around, there's Lee Peak now below us. So we're only about 250 to 300 feet below Charleston summit. There's Madre Mountain, Charleston Village, and you can see some sunlight on the Las Vegas Valley. Onward. We're at the summit, just a couple hundred feet above us. So definitely closing in on the summit. Just another switchback, and then up toward the summit, another switchback, and we'll be on the final switchback approach. And let's see if we can get a 360. There's Griffith Peak in the center. There's our descent ridge from the summit. Final switchback to the summit of Charleston Peak. And I gotta say, this final summit approach, even though, wow, the switchbacks look steep, still not as difficult as the ladder on the Lee Canyon mid-ridge. And let's see. You know, I think I can nail the very spot where we summited the mid-ridge. And it's right there. You see that squarish rise to the left. And just on the right side is where we summited the mid-ridge from Lee Canyon Meadow and connected with the North Loop Trail. And then you can see the route we took to Lee Peak. There's Lee Peak summit. And you can see in the background, you can see from left to right, there's Sisters North, Sisters South, and Black Rock Sister. And then here's Max Peak. And there is McFarland Peak. So give you more of a view of where we are, and then let's just sweep around and see all of those, if you can remember what I pointed out just a moment ago. There, of course, in the center is Mummy Mountain. Awesome silhouette. Down to Charleston Village. And there on the right is Griffith Peak, on the left is Harris Peak. and beyond is La Madre Mountain, and that permanent snow-filled, which is the Devil's Slide, and actually composed of limestone. And then there is the Las Vegas Valley. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of looking down Kyle Canyon, and right here in the center is Coxcomb Ridge and Peak, and then there's Fletcher Peak. So there you have it, a lot of the viewpoints from up here on Charleston Peak, and we're about ready to summit. Okay, we may go silent up here because of all the wind, but here we are on Charleston Peak summit, all the way from Upper Lee Meadow, Lee Canyon. Let's do a quick 360. And by the way, there's Pahrump in full view. And in the distance behind Pahrump would be Telescope Peak in Death Valley. Well, here's a little cubby up on the summit of Charleston Peak. There's the summit box right there. Get you out of the wind. But yes, I've rested. Now I'm ready to plunge downward. So here we go. Okay, heading down the south climb area, and I just stay on this ridge rather than descending to the trail on the other side, which is the main trail. And because I'm on this ridge, then I head straight down to the airplane crash site, and from there just ride that upper ridge all the way back to the saddle, and then down through the burn area on the trail again, because I connect with the trail around the saddle area, and then on over toward Griffith Peak. And I think I'm going to be pretty much out of time by the time I get there, so I don't think we're going to include Griffith Peak today. Maybe another day. Here we are at the crash site. A group of climbers I met at the summit, and we'll be heading up that ridge. Continuing along the upper south rim of Kyle Canyon. And in a bit, we'll see a trail that leads down gradually back to the North Loop Trail. The thing I like about this approach is that you don't descend and reascend. If you stick to the North Loop Trail, on the other hand, yeah, you're going to descend quite a bit and then reascend before you get to the saddle junction. Okay, continuing on, and look at this awesome views. You can see Charleston Peak over there and the plane crash site in the center, and beautiful Bristlecone Pine forest here, surviving on this windswept, beautiful limestone ridge top. There's a group of hikers that I met on the summit, and you can see where the trail angles down to the south. Descending and reascending. So this ridge not only is more gradual as it descends, but it helps you not to have to descend and reascend. And there's Charleston Peak. There's the 360-degree view. And there you can see the line of the trail that angles over to the saddle up there. I say down there. Yeah. And what a view from up here, as opposed to being down below. Okay, there you can see the saddle. And those hikers I met up on Charleston Peak, they're ascending the saddle. They have taken this little trail, this upper trail here, which is so much more gradual, so much nicer than being down on the North Loop Trail below. And there's the North Loop Trail below us, but instead we took this little cutoff trail along the ridge, which is it's just much nicer, better view, more gradual. So, continuing on toward the saddle up there, where you see the hikers topping that saddle. Now here's where you can see where the upper trail splits from the main North Loop Trail. And as I said, I prefer this upper trail, much more gradual, less descent and reascent involved. And we are now just below the saddle, so onward. Okay, here we are at the saddle, and there you see right in the center is Griffith Peak. Starting to get cold up here, and there's rain falling, so we'll try to keep the camera dry, otherwise it'll just stop showing videos. And then looking back there is Charleston Peak. Okay, entering the burn area. And I believe this is the point where we are actually 7 miles from the South Loop or South Climb Trailhead. So 7 miles to go, and then I'll be on my mountain bike. There you see Griffith Peak through the trees. Yeah, sometime come up here and just look at all the amazing sculptures that have been created by this burn. I've got a page on this, I think the Charleston Peak page on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. I took my time as I was ascending and took a lot of pictures in with blue skies in the background, and a lot of pictures of the burn area. Today we're just going to pass through though, get over to the junction and then head down. Not going up to Griffith Peak today, got a long ways to go. Once I get on the mountain bike, it's another 15 miles to get into Lee Canyon, and there's a 5-mile steep uphill on Deer Creek Road, and that's going to seem like Mount Everest by the time I get there. So yeah, heading by the shortest path now to the finish line. Passing through the burn area now. This is a burn back in 2013. And if you can imagine, all these once majestic bristlecone pines that were between 1 and 2,000 years old were lost. That's how quickly something can happen. You lose all those thousands of years of growth in just a few hours. And who knows how long it's going to take to restore. Probably at least another couple thousand years before this is once again forested. And that's only if there's not another burn in the meantime. This cairn marks the 5-mile point to the South Climb Trailhead. So 5 more miles to go. It is definitely starting to move from sprinkling to raining, so I can't guarantee that the camera is going to keep recording video. We may lose some recordings before we're down at the South Climb Trailhead. But here we are, 5 miles to go. Now it's downhill to the junction and then to the South Climb Trailhead, and all the way down to Deer Creek Road actually. So then it's an uphill on Deer Creek Road for about 5 miles. So here we go, continuing on down. Beautiful area here, but we've got some rain. And here we are at the junction. I don't think I'm going to do any more recording until we get down to the South Climb Trailhead. It's raining, and there are a lot of recordings that I've taken of this section from South Climb to the junction right here. Little camping spot, really nice. Griffith Peak up in that direction. We're not going to make that today. We're heading down to the South Climb Trailhead. Here we go. There's a series of 3 or 4 beautiful overlooks on the South Climb Trail. And yeah, if you're ever on this trail, definitely check out these overlooks. You look straight down into Charleston Village. Okay, continuing on down, making a beeline for the trailhead. We're a little over 3 miles to go. Hey, here we are back at the bike. And yeah, now it's about a 16-mile ride to Lee Canyon, Upper Lee Meadow, where we began. So it'll feel nice to sit down on this bike. Looking forward to it. Okay, onward. Okay, we're at the base of Deer Creek Road. It's a 5-mile uphill to the North Loop Trail. And then there's another downhill, and we just came down from South Climb Trail. Didn't take too long at all. As you can tell, we're not in the wilderness anymore. Once we get to the base of Deer Creek Road, Deer Creek and Lee Canyon Road, we've got about a 3-mile uphill. It's not as bad as this 5-mile uphill coming up. So this is the big one. Here we go. Okay, I'll be signing off soon because it's getting dark, but I'm closing in on Upper Lee Meadow, which makes the complete circuit. So yeah, I had some problems back on Deer Creek Road. My bike seat fell off and I didn't have the tool to put it back on. Fortunately, a passerby had the tools and stopped and helped me to put that bike seat back together. That would have been a real problem. I'm about a mile from Upper Lee Meadow at this point. So 1 more mile to go and we'll be there. It'll make the complete circuit except for just about 3 miles on Deer Creek Road where I got a ride. But apart from that, I've done the complete loop. Okay, next time you hear from me, we'll be back at the beast. Okay, here we are, back at Upper Lee Meadow, and back at the beast. It's been an amazing day, all the way up to the summit rim of Lee Kyle Canyons, over to Lee Peak, and then over to Charleston Peak, down the South Climb Trail, picking up my bike at the base of the South Climb Trail and riding it down to Deer Creek Road where the seat fell off. And fortunately there was someone that helped me down there. I got halfway up to the North Loop Trail and this person stopped and helped me put my seat back on. I didn't have the tool, he had the tool. And then he took me 2.5 miles up to the North Loop Trail. From there, I rode down Deer Creek Road and then up Lee Canyon Road to Upper Lee Meadow where we began. And it's been a truly amazing day. There's Upper Lee Meadow. We made it. Okay, now we put the bike on the car and head home.